What is up, y'all? My name is Brandon. Let's talk about the books I read in February. Before I do, though, I do want to go over really quick what I'm reading again. Briefly, the ones that I talked about before, but I did start a couple others I just want to mention. I'm still reading The Son of Man by John Baptiste del Amo. I'm closing in on the end of this, so I think I only have like 80 pages left. Still very good. I'm still kind of paused on this right now. I definitely like it a lot. Just paused until the other members of the group that I was going to read with get their book. So TBD on when I'll actually get to the rest of this. And then still Pessoa, the biography of Fernando Pessoa, which again is great. I haven't really touched it this week, but still just something you can pick up and not be lost as to where you are in his life, which I think is definitely valuable to have. The other two I started are both fiction. I did start Persona by Eofe Josie Clements. This is a new book, 2026 release. This is like a horror thriller type of novel. It is disturbing and very good so far. I've heard mixed things about it. Some people say they just didn't like it, but the plot really just centers around this trans woman who is online and she ends up seeing a video of herself doing porn, and she just kind of like goes down this hole of like insanity almost of the aftermath of seeing something like that of yourself. And then the perspective kind of switches and it goes along with the girl who was in the video, if it's actually her or not. It's like there's some perspective shifts, but it definitely is really good so far. I read I don't wake up early. I woke up and read this morning, which I usually do not do, but I'm like 120 pages into this. I think it's like 280 maybe, 260. So definitely recommend this, at least so far, if you like just weird, unhinged literary fiction. Another one I recently started that is way different than what my normal genres are, but I started The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I got this from the library. I was just kind of going in and seeing if they had it, and they did, so I just picked it up, and I'm about halfway through with this. I actually really like this. Something about the language. I think the writing is really good, but the language just really makes me think of I don't like a fairy tale almost, but Game of Thrones-esque, which is definitely interesting. I definitely think that there will be some twists, because if the way that it's going is how it ends, I think it may be a little bit underwhelming by the end, but I do really like the writing, and I think that this is definitely worth reading, at least at the point that I'm at. All right, I just made some coffee, so let's talk about what I read in February. February was definitely a less stacked reading month for me than January, which I guess is kind of par because it is the shortest month. And a lot of books that I finished in January were actually books that I had started before January, so it's kind of like that month just really stacked up, but I did finish some really good books in February, and I am super excited to talk about them. First up is the only reread on here. This is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. The book one of the Dark Tower series. I am doing a reread of this in the next, one book a month for, 7 months, however long it takes us to do this. We're doing this in the Life and Books book club, which you can do like buddy reads in there and stuff. It's kind of like mini book clubs inside of the entire Life and Books book club, which is just awesome to have the community available to do that. This book, I can't say anything negative about it, really. I think if there is, it's just how different it is from the rest of the story, but the revised edition, which is what this one is where King went through and added kind of context and like foreshadowing for later things in the book, which this is the third time of me going through this series, so it's kind of like I see them and I recognize what he's doing and what he's talking about, and I think that's just, seeing that just makes me excited for what's coming up. with the rest of the series. So we're planning to start book 2 very soon for March. So if you're not in the book club, I would definitely suggest you join us. Not even just for that, just for the book club itself, because there's so much to talk about and so many wonderful people, and and that's not even sponsored or anything. I just am super happy to be a part of that with Andy and Tony. So The Gunslinger, Stephen King. I recommend this 100%. I would say everybody needs to read at least this book and the second book to know if you were going to enjoy the series as a whole. But cannot wait to keep this going. I just realized I didn't really talk about it. This follows Roland Deschain, who is a gunslinger set in this unspecified time period, although there are references to it being a distant future from where we are now, where there are brands that are kind of like pop up that are common now, and references to things that have happened, wars and stuff like that. But he's following the man in black as he goes along this desert, and he eventually meets this boy named Jake, who really changes everything for him. And it just follows, this book specifically follows his travels following the man in black through the desert, meeting Jake, and the aftermath of all of that. And then the discussion at the end of this book between two of the main characters is absolutely incredible. Next up, I have The Story of O by Pauline Réage. This book was written as a dare, it seems like. This was actually a writer named Anne Duclos. She was a literary critic in France in the 50s, and she wrote this book to show her, who was then her lover, the publisher, that she could write a book that was kind of like sexually explicit, which this definitely is. It's translated from French, which I think kind of tones it down a little bit, but I do believe that this book being written in the time period that it was extremely shocking, and I think that even now it is still kind of like pushes the boundaries of what literature is and what constitutes obscenity or sexually explicit material. With that said, though, I really did enjoy this, and I found it to be enlightening to the perspective of honestly, it follows a woman named O, who is kind of like kept as a sex slave almost, but she's like willing to do it. She kind of finds herself that she feels connected to that in a way where she can have control over something, and while being taken advantage of, she has power in the relationships that she finds herself in throughout the process of her enslavement, I guess we'll call it. There's really nothing in here as far as non-consensual sexual assault or anything like that, so I don't think it's triggering for that, because I think that she's definitely writing from the perspective of O in the story truly becoming attached to the way of life that she has entered into, and finding that a lot of times her freedom is restricted more when she's not a part of this scheme that's going on in the book. So I would recommend this, but not to everybody. I think if you are into philosophical or ethical questions about human nature, I think that this definitely would hit for you. But I think the majority of people could probably just skip this, although I did really enjoy it. Also read Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. This book is a very short book that really just details the life of a man named Robert Granier, who is living in the United States in the start of the 20th century. And he's really just going through his life. You're following him both before and after the loss of his family, and how he deals with that, how he deals with loneliness, how he deals with tragedy, and ultimately his personal and career defeats and successes. And as he kind of goes through his life, there's some absolutely beautiful lines written through here. I really want to read more from Dennis Johnson. I have Tree of Smoke also, but I thought this would be a good introduction to him and his writing. But I did a review of this one on Instagram, which I was pretty happy with, although, I mean, it's a short book. There's really quite a lot you can say about this being so short, but I would recommend this to pretty much anybody as far as just a good literary fiction novella that delves into some deep human questions that we all deal with every single day. Next up, I read The Fever by Wallace Shawn. I blew through this in a single night. It was probably an hour, maybe. It just captivated me so much. This is a monologue. I think it actually is meant to be performed by him on stage somewhere. But this is a really just, like I said, a monologue about this person who's like on a bathroom floor in a hotel, and he's just kind of going through this kind of like personal crisis about political struggles and what it means to be human when we're thinking about things in terms of rich, poor, and how we treat each other. So another novella slash, I don't even know what you would call this, that deals with ethical questions and dilemmas and how we deal with privilege versus things that we should cherish and be proud of, and the internal struggle that comes with working through all of that. So again, I know I mentioned this before, I think it's very interesting to be able to write anything that focuses so highly on one period of time in one place and have things just draw out of the character, the narrator's mind as you read, and nothing's really happening, but the writing pulls you in and makes you truly feel something as you're reading. And I think that's why we read. I think that's the beauty of reading anything, and this is definitely no exception. It's super quick. You can get through it in no time at all. Also read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This book is probably my favorite read of this month. I did a reel on Instagram. It was about books I think could get you out of a reading slump, and I think that this book is perfect for that. It is a good length. The pages are short enough. The chapter section breaks are short enough to make you feel like you can just do one more and just keep you going as you read. Perhaps I did not articulate it as well as I could have on Instagram. This is first and foremost a story of a young black girl's experience growing up, and she is mocked and criticized for her otherness being her blackness in terms of society at that time. And if you know anything about Toni Morrison, you know that she writes first and foremost about race. Her job, she felt, is to do what people who did not have a voice could do themselves, is to write about them and share their experiences. And that is the thing that she takes very seriously. And I think that she does a brilliant job in here with the language and the dialect and the writing that truly is poetic a lot of the time. This is her first novel, and it follows this girl named Piccola, I don't know how you say her name, who wishes to be beautiful, to have features that the other white girls have that make them beautiful, so to speak. And to go beyond that, you have her home life, which starts to really disintegrate, and she really has no hope, it feels like. And I think it's an extremely sad story, the detachment that it has to her experience that truly lets you get inside of that middle ground between experiencing it and simply reading about it. It does truly deal with our obsession with beauty and conformity and wanting to fit in. I think that directly ties back into the black experience, and I think it's still endlessly relevant and prescient in today's society. So if you read anything on this list that I'm talking about, this should be it. And I can't recommend Toni Morrison highly enough. I just can't. She's brilliant. I read Sula as well, and I did like this better, but I think anything so far, I can't see her missing. Next up, I read The Trumpets of Jericho by Unica Zern. This would be up there in my favorite reads of this month for sure. This year, absolutely. I think that this book is just amazing. It is, again, really short. It's only like about 60 pages, maybe like 52 pages of actual text. The introduction is probably like 15 to 20 pages, which is pretty crazy actually. But this is a story of motherhood primarily. I think a really dark look at the feelings of hatred, of feeling like you're almost prisoner in your own body due to this feeling of having a baby inside you. She writes so beautifully. There are some just amazing quotes in here. I underlined so much of this that literally every page has something on it where I just felt like she was speaking to me directly. It is surreal. It is heartbreaking, really, but psychological, disturbing narrative she's kind of like waging a war with herself and the world and feeling like she just wants to give up and have it be over. This really is leading to her having a breakdown herself and just kind of spilling out everything that she feels. If you know what I like to read, this is definitely it. Narratively, it doesn't really flow much, but there are glimpses of what she's trying to do with the narrative. I think the writing is really what makes it stand out more. I think it hits a little bit harder too, knowing that Unica Zern herself committed suicide shortly after writing this. She had 2 children herself, and she had a self-induced abortion in the 1950s. She was a German surrealist writer that I've only started to hear about now that I posted this on Instagram, and I had some people mention that they had heard of her before, and I cannot wait to read more from her. But this is obviously the last thing that she wrote before she committed suicide. I read The Rainbow Stories by William T. Vollmann. This is the first Vollmann that I had read that I went slowly through, but I felt also read The Rainbow Stories by William T. Vollmann. This is the first work by Vollmann that I had read, knowing that I have about 8 or 9 that are sitting on the shelf behind me. Like, I need to get to some of them. I know that this is a good place to start, recommended because it's short stories and it kind of gives you a wide variety of what he likes to write about and the styles that he uses. He's a very unique writer in that his content varies from ancient myths and fables to really gritty real life, like on the street with drug dealers and prostitutes, and even going to philosophy and robotics and the gods and biblical stories. It's just like anything you can think of from a story perspective is probably in here somewhere. And I think that I'm definitely going to rush to read more from him. I do want to read The Atlas next, I think. Although if you have any other recommendations for places to start with his novels, I know I'm happy to hear and take any recommendations into account, but I'm really excited to keep going with Vollmann. I think these stories are hypnotic at times. I think all of them are not brilliant. All of them are not ones that I would go back to, but there are several that I would definitely go back and read again. They show this like resemblance to our world. The one I like the most would be, it's called White Knights, and White Knights being Knights, not knights like day versus night, which deals with this like really gritty and pure look at the white supremacist underbelly of certain groups in San Francisco, and it kind of like plays on throughout some other of the stories that deal with this same environment. It's disheartening to see that there are a lot of those things that still pop up and are real in our world today, but also shocking at times. And you think there could be no way that this is real, that people talk like that that these kind of things happen. But yeah, I definitely recommend this collection. I did tab whenever I saw the word rainbow. I tabbed and I got quite a few. I did try to use like some different colors to make it almost like a rainbow. So, but yeah, I think the cover itself kind of shows you that kind of aspect of, you know, trying to shock the reader with that kind of like almost, you know, very provocative image, which understood that Volman was a provocative writer, and I get that sense here for sure. The last book I finished, which I finished on the last day of February, not that it matters, was Independent People by Haldor Laxness. I was somewhat underwhelmed by this book. I did like the writing a lot, and I think Laxness is a brilliant writer, and I really want to read more from him. I think my expectations were a little bit high for this book, and I think like the introduction talks about it as the book of this guy's life, like the book of his life, the book that literally changed his life. And I think that starting it off like that can throw readers off because they get this sense that it's going to be this life-changing experience when it really might not be. I think the story is definitely nothing exciting by any means. I don't think that there's anything in here that's really super shocking. I think the one scene where the main character, Bjartor, he kind of is dealing with these conflicting feelings related to the relationship that he has with his daughter in one particular section, that was probably like the highlight for me. We're feeling this like fullness of human emotion and experience really was very enjoyable to read. The bottom line of this is it's an epic story of this farmer in Iceland who is simply living his life, and he wants nothing to do with anybody else, and he is stubborn as hell, and he does not want to rely on anybody. He wants to be an independent person. He wants his family to simply be independent people. And I think that there is a lot of reading is inherently political, yes. There are a lot of straight up political discussions in here about communism versus capitalistic pursuits and the abilities of farmers to buy things, inflation, and all this kind of stuff when it comes to farming itself. And not to say those aren't important discussions to have, but I just wasn't as into that experience when I was reading it. Like, it was just kind of, I was more focused on the writing in those parts than the actual story, which again, there's nothing wrong with. But I do think if you're not invested in the story as much, the emotional content doesn't hit quite as hard. I will say that in many parts, this book is genuinely funny, and there's one scene towards the beginning where he is dealing with his wife, his first wife, and something happens, and he kind of like something really kind of terrible that he is talking to her a certain way or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording that happened, but he kind of like pats her on the back like he would a horse and just kind of goes on with his life. And it's just like funny, but also kind of disheartening that that relationship that he had with his family was kind of tarnished by his just supreme desire to not be beholden to anybody. I think by the end of this book, you definitely get a good conclusion. It's a beautiful ending. And yeah, I'm definitely going to review this soon. Let me know if people want a full like video review on this, because I do think that there's plenty to say. Although I did not love this book like a lot of people have. But I do think it's important. I do think you should read it. And I do think his writing is worth reading despite any qualms you might have about the story. That is what I read in February. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite book of February was. What are some good books you would recommend that you read last month? I think that March is going to be a good month for me. I'm already about halfway through some, and I'm finishing some soon, so I'll definitely have some good books to talk about in my March recap, so I'm definitely excited for that. Please make sure you like and subscribe. That helps me out so much, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, truly. Keep enjoying everything that you're reading. Do not let anybody tell you differently that you shouldn't read something. Always read what you want, and I'll see you on the next one.